Hello, my name is Sarah Chin, and this is the story of how I discovered that family can sometimes be your worst enemy, especially when it comes to business. For 10 years, I gave my all to our family's small tech company, turning it from a struggling startup into a $50 million enterprise. But sometimes success breeds jealousy, even among those who should be celebrating your accomplishments. Remember that day when our family business was just a little computer repair shop in a strip mall? Dad had started it 20 years ago, and even though it barely made enough money to support our family, it was his pride and joy. I was the quiet one who stayed, and my sister Emma was always his favorite. She received straight A's and attended a prestigious business school. "Sarah, you're wasting your potential here," Emma would say when she came home from college. "You should aim higher." But I noticed something in our small shop that others didn't perceive. Emma was studying theoretical business models, and I was learning real-world programming and identifying gaps in the I created our first proprietary software in my senior year of college. It was a straightforward yet efficient tool for small businesses to manage their inventory. It wasn't revolutionary, but it was easy to use and reasonably priced. At first, Dad wasn't convinced, but when local businesses began purchasing licenses, his perspective changed. "Maybe you're onto something here, kiddo," he said at last. When Emma was moving up the corporate ladder at a prominent consulting firm in New York, I was building something real when I showed a glimmer of pride in my work. If only I had known that those words were as fleeting as morning dew, the business grew steadily under my guidance. I worked 14-hour days, 7 days a week. Mom handled everything with tactful concern, saying, "Don't worry too hard, Sarah." She would bring me dinner at the office, saying, "You need a life outside of work too." However, I was motivated by a vision and perhaps a deep-seated desire to prove myself to my family. 5 years into our transformation, we reached our first $1 million milestone. At a family dinner, Emma declared that with my business experience, we could truly take things to the next level. Dad grinned at her words. "That's fantastic, princess. We could use your professional expertise." Emma abruptly rekindled her interest in the family business at that point, quitting her job in New York and returning home. I believe it's time I took my rightful place in the company. "Touch around here," I sat there, fork suspended in midair, trying to comprehend what was happening. The company I had built from almost nothing was being handed to my sister on a silver platter, but I forced myself to be a team player and swallowed my objections. Emma was appointed co-CEO alongside me, despite having no prior experience in our industry, because my father said it would be beneficial for the company's reputation to have someone with her qualifications in charge. I concentrated on operations and product development, while she managed marketing and investor relations. The following 5 years were a study in contrast as I continued to develop new software solutions and uphold client relationships, while Emma concentrated on projecting a glamorous image for herself as the company's spokesperson. Emma started excluding me from important meetings, making decisions without consulting me, and gradually pushing me to the sidelines of my own creation. This was after she gave interviews about being a woman in technology and accepted awards for entrepreneurship, all of which she took credit for innovations my team and I had created. Our revenue continued to grow, reaching $50 million annually. Everything changed on the day of Dad's 60th birthday party. Emma came up with the idea, of course, and she invited all of our business associates to the grand ballroom of the most expensive hotel in the city. It was more of a networking event than a birthday celebration, but that was Emma's style, so everything had to have a purpose. I arrived early to assist with the setup, wearing a simple. Emma criticized the black dress right away, saying, "Couldn't you have put in more effort?" She hissed, "These are important people coming tonight." I chose to ignore her remark and concentrate on welcoming guests as they arrived. The room soon filled with clients, family members, and business associates, and Emma worked the room like a politician while I stayed in the background, making sure everything went smoothly during dinner. But Emma's speech went as planned. I thought it could be a heartfelt remembrance of Dad, perhaps highlighting some of our childhood memories. But instead, she dropped a bombshell that would forever destroy our family as we celebrate Dad's 60th birthday. Her voice echoed throughout the quiet room, and I believe it's time to make some announcements at Chen. The board has decided that technologies needs unified leadership to move forward, and I stopped attending board meetings because for too long we've been slowed down by antiquated ideas and resistance to change. Emma kept staring at me, so I will be taking over as sole CEO with immediate effect. It's time for some things that are no longer. The room erupted in whispers as Emma continued her character assassination under the guise of a corporate announcement, telling some people that her voice, which was dripping with false sympathy, was more appropriate for technical roles than leadership. My sister Sarah has been sufficient in maintaining our legacy systems, but she needs to compete in today's market. I looked at my dad expecting him to defend me, but instead he nodded in agreement with Emma's words, a proud smile on his face. Mom looked at her plate, her hands shaking a little. But the truth is that Emma went on, "You're worthless in today's business world. We need vision, we need excellence, and honestly, Sarah, you're just not cut out for this level of business." I could feel the sympathy of the skate and fruit of the judgment as everything I had created and every sacrifice I had made were being taken away in front of everyone I knew. "Sarah, your outdated beliefs and lack of appropriate business education have become a liability. It's time for you to leave the room gracefully." The silence was deafening. Everyone expected a scene, maybe tears, maybe a shouting match, but instead, I just picked up my purse, walked to Dad's table, and placed a small wrapped package in front of him. "Happy birthday, Dad," I said quietly, and then I left the ballroom with my head held high, leaving behind the whispers. I sat up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor, and the sound echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. And stairs that evening, as I sat in my home office surrounded by patents and awards bearing my name. I came to the conclusion that Emma had won, but she had overlooked a crucial detail that would make her moment of triumph the worst mistake of her life. As I turned on my laptop and started typing, a tiny smile crossed my lips, and I thought that tomorrow would be interesting. The next morning would bring changes that none of them had anticipated, changes that would make them realize just how worthless I truly was. After all, there are multiple ways to run a successful business, and I have learned more in 10 years than Emma had in all her fancy business classes. The following morning, dawn bright and clear, I arrived at the office early before waited at precisely 9:00 a.m. without consulting anyone else. Sarah Emma's voice was a mixture of surprise and displeasure as she walked through the front doors with Dad at her side. "What are you doing here? I thought after last night you'd have the triumphant smiles that were about to be wiped from your faces." Decency to remain at home, I grinned as I recalled the email I had sent at 3 in the morning. "Just tying up some loose ends, sister, but since you're here, we should definitely talk about the company's future." "There's nothing to talk about," Dad interrupted his message to all of Chin Technologies' important clients, partners, and employees. "Emma is in charge of the voice firm, and the board has already approved it." "Yes, the board," I said, taking out my tablet, "and let's talk about that. You see, I was actually building this company while Emma was busy organizing parties and conducting interviews, and there are a few things you both seem to have forgotten." To start, I brought up a document on the main screen of the conference room to remind you that I own 51% of Chin Technologies shares. When we incorporated 10 years ago, Dad gave Emma and me equal shares of 25% each, keeping 50% for himself. However, 3 years ago, when we needed money for expansion, Dad sold me 26% of the shares. You may recall that day, Dad, when you were too busy attending Emma's awards ceremony to handle the negotiations yourself, so you signed the documents without carefully reading them. Emma's immaculately manicured hands gripped the conference table, whispering to her that her father would never know what he was doing. I kept pulling up more documents, and that's not all. The core software that produces 80% of our revenue is owned by my independent company, Innovative Solutions LC Chen, not Chin Technologies. Technologies merely has a licensing agreement that expires. I checked my watch 10 minutes ago, and when I saw the renewal papers you asked me to sign last week, the ones you were too busy reading because you were helping Emma plan the party, Dawson fell into a chair. Yes, those were the documents I chose not to submit, and Emma's face twisted in rage at you. While you were busy announcing my ostensibly graceful departure last night, I was sending emails to our clients. You see, most of our major clients have personal loyalty clauses in their contracts they signed with Chin Technologies because of me, my expertise, and my track record. I interrupted her, "Little careful, sister, so you might want to hear the rest before you finish that sentence." The room fell silent as I told them about the changes in leadership and my departure. I then displayed my email with the dozens of responses that had already been received. Would you like to know how many of our top developers, who, incidentally, work for Innovative Solutions, had already accepted positions at my new venture, or how many had already activated their contract termination clauses? Emma's perfect composure broke as she frantically checked her phone, saying, "You can't do this. The company you tried to steal from me, I finished for the one you thought you could just take over because you have an MBA and Dad's approval." That company ceased to exist. We could see employees gathering and whispering as they checked their emails behind the glass walls. Here are your options. Option 1. I leave Chin Technologies with my shares, software, clients, and employees. You could explain to all those important people you invited last night that the company's value dropped to zero overnight. And Dad's face had aged 10. That's what happened when you decided to humiliate me in front of everyone we know. I stood up and smoothed my dress. He asked weakly, Option 2, you both resign. I take full control of Chin Technologies. You keep your shares as silent partners, receiving dividends but having no say in operations. Years later, in the final 10 minutes, he gave Emma a nice severance package and positive references for her next job. But Emma's face had turned an interesting shade of red. Emma, I spent 10 years trying to be a good daughter and sister while you both took me for granted. I built this company from nothing while you gathered praise for my work. I only planned this. I checked my watch again around 12 hours later. You've been waiting for the right time to stab us in the back, haven't you? The next hour was a haze of paperwork and lawyers, and by noon, I was sitting alone in what was now my office, looking out over the city. The company I had built was now truly mine, but the victory felt hollow, and the relationships with my family were in ruins all around me. This was after you called me worthless in front of everyone we know. My phone buzzed again, reminding me that another client was being terminated. Trust talked like she had dropped Bristol, and her mother came to visit me that night. Her eyes were red from crying, and she asked softly, Did it have to end this way? They gave me no other option. I answered in a firm but gentle voice that they would have taken everything I had built and thrown me out without a second thought. She nodded slowly, understanding but sad about what had happened. I then showed her the plans I had already created for expansions and new product lines, innovations, and now I've built something even bigger. But this time, I didn't have to carry people who think I'm worthless. Over the course of the following year, Chin Technologies tripled in value under my sole leadership, and Emma found a job with a Silicon Valley startup. Her father retired, hopefully wiser, and finally realizing that his golden child had almost destroyed his legacy. We see each other during the holidays, keeping a courteous distance that conceals the wounds that might never completely heal. Occasionally, late at night, I look at old family photos and am a little sad about what we lost. But then I recall that night at the birthday party, Emma's look of contempt, Dad's nod, and her harsh words in business and in my story spread throughout business circles as a warning about underestimating, and I learned that sometimes the quiet ones, the ones written off as worthless, are the ones you should watch out for because we are the ones who know how to build something from nothing and how to take it all back when others try to steal it. Family respect is earned, not given. They learned that lesson too late. My success speaks for itself, but when I go to industry events these days, I frequently run into whisperers, like Sarah Chen, who never complete sentences. Last week, I was invited to speak at Emma's business school's graduation ceremony. Where I discussed hidden strengths and the power of undervalued leaders, I accepted the invitation with a slight smile, already preparing my speech because I have a lot to say and the company is still doing well under my direction. More significantly, though, I found peace with my choices because sometimes the best retaliation isn't about destroying others but about rising. I'm reminded of something my mother once said to me. Success is the best revenge, but wisdom is knowing when to stop seeking revenge and start seeking growth. She was right. I've moved past the need for revenge and now concentrate on creating something meaningful that will outlast. I'm writing this from my office overlooking the city. I never handed Dad a photo album of the company's journey from that small repair shop to what it is now, but I still have that wrapped birthday present that I kept despite all the small-scale jealousies and family conflicts. Perhaps one day, when the wounds have sufficiently healed, I will give it to him. Till then, it acts as a reminder for him that our best qualities frequently come from the very things that others undervalue us.